For Creamer Media's Polity, I am Shannon de Rehove. Margie Owen-Smith, Project Manager of the Home Language Project, a non-profit organization, joins me to discuss the problem of language disadvantage in multilingual schools. Please provide an overview of the Home Language Project and what it aims to achieve.
Well, aims are not that straightforward, so let me talk around those aims a little bit. Yes, we're an NGO. We were set up specifically to address the problem of language disadvantage in our local schools, which are English medium schools. The roots of this project actually go back to the mid-1990s, when I had children in a primary school in the area around which I live. And I was hugely concerned with the fact that my child was not being taught an African language in the new South Africa. So I got onto the governing body and got involved. And what was immediately clear was the confusion around the whole issue of what languages should be taught in schools as subjects. Everybody was waiting for everybody else. The primary schools were waiting for the high schools to make the decision, that they were waiting for the universities. Everybody was waiting for government. They were waiting for a lead, and it never came. But in fact, school governing bodies sort of muddled along and sorted out that language as subject issue as best they could at the time. But what was clear was that there was a second issue lurking in the background, a bigger issue. And that is, what should we as English medium former Model C schools be doing about the disadvantage facing our second language learners, our African language learners in an English medium environment? That was a far more complex question. So now I'm going to fast forward. That was mid-1990s. I'm going to fast forward to 2000, when the Home Language Project was formed as a coalition of 6 school governing bodies from these schools. And the aim, and it was done in consultation with our African language speaking parents. So it was a long drawn out process, but we finally got it together. It had 2 primary aims. One was an investigative one, to actually look at ways, how could we address this problem of disadvantage, and do something different, go beyond what we had been doing up to that point, which was send children to remedial classes, send them for extra lessons. So it needed to go beyond that. And there was a second part, a second big thrust beyond the investigative, and that was to actually support learners' home languages, to provide home language maintenance, rather than just look at it as a problem of give them more English, give them more English. So we put 2 teachers into our system to share amongst those 6 schools, and we taught reading and writing in African languages in 9 different languages, and brought in multilingual libraries. So that was the thrust at that time. Now we'll fast forward again, 2004. By then it was clear that to make real inroads into this problem, we had to get into how learning happens in the classroom in this kind of multilingual situation. There was something else that was clear as well, that we thought might be a clue to a solution here, and that was that none of our schools were in any way using the communicative skills that learners bring with them from home, their skills in their own home languages. And yes, possibly we thought this could be a clue to a way ahead, and we set out to test this idea. We picked up a highly dysfunctional, failing school where the headmaster was pleading for somebody to do something about language. He was just watching the marks go down, 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 and he said, I'm at my wit's end. I know it's a language problem, but please come and help. So we took on that school, and after a year of trying methods of using home languages alongside English, the results were so promising that we then took on that massive school and that horribly dysfunctional situation and worked on R&D for 4, 5, 6 years. And yes, at that time, so then our aims were very much to develop and test, to experiment, to develop, to test. Okay? We carried on doing our service provision in our member schools, but we had that split set of aims. Now I'm going to fast forward to 2000 and, well, let's fast forward to today. The aim is to give teachers those skills that we developed during that time. And the way that we do that is by running workshops through NAPTOSA, the Teachers Professional Union, where we try to do that for teachers. And the vision is that if we can get our methods out there in many classrooms all over the country, this is a way to change the system from within. So this has been a long-winded way of talking about aims, but the point is that they've shifted over the years, over 15 years now, and in fact more. But the one thing that's been constant is our drive to address the problem of disadvantage, and since 2004, to incorporate in our methodologies the learners' home languages.
What makes the Home Language Project unique?
Everything, Shannon. Everything. But if I can just focus quickly on maybe two things. One is the fact that it was a parent-initiated effort, not academic, not government, and it came from parents who wanted their children to be in English medium schools for a whole variety of reasons, but they were anxious about the disadvantage, the language disadvantage being faced, and very really they were anxious about their children losing their own languages, disrespecting their own languages. Another particular one, I think, has been its innovativeness from the beginning. We set out to think outside the box rather than try to improve on same old stuff. And maybe also one could talk about its counterintuitive path, because we specifically brought in methodologies and tried things which seemed to go absolutely counter to current thinking about language.
The project addresses a critical aspect of disadvantage in education, where some learners' home language is different from the official medium of the school. Why do you feel that an alternative approach to education is so vital?
The key problem, of course, is that you cannot use a monolingual system to educate a multilingual society. You can't use English only without inevitably disadvantaging those whose first language is not English. So you're left with learners facing disadvantage, teachers facing an extraordinarily difficult situation, particularly in Gauteng, where we are so multilingual. So the key challenge is how to take weak second language learners and turn them into strong bilingual learners that can use their own language alongside English for a powerful learning combination. But to do this, we need a common language. We have to have a common language to make the classroom feasible. It makes only good sense for this to be English in a multilingual area, but in rural areas it can be good sense for it to be the community language or the mother tongue, as long as at the end of the day those children in rural areas also emerge with a powerful two-language combination for learning purposes and for life after school. The other thing, of course, that you have to have is a methodology. We need a multi-bilingual methodology that makes it possible for every learner to have this powerful combination. But the question is how. We use a methodology that has been tried and tested in really dysfunctional situations on classes of up to 50 children, which, let's say it has two parts to it. The simple part is oral. It is simple. It needs no extra resources. And you can make a huge difference just by using the basic, simple part of the methodology, which involves linking onto the idea of, well, linking onto the link between talking and thinking. You have to think in order to talk. But you can also turn that around. By making yourself talk about something, you're forcing yourself to think. So by linking the think, talk, talk, think idea, you can get thinking, digging deeper and into a subject and becoming more organized. So we're saying, start with that, and then it's about learner talk, not teacher talk, learner talk. Learner talk in a classroom, what do they talk about? They talk about the task that the teacher has set. And they have the time that the teacher sets. So already you're seeing this is a teacher-managed situation. And then we use what we call language buddies. Same language pairs, where your Chinese pair can talk together, your Urdu pair can talk together, your Setswana pair are talking together. So you can have all this talk going on. And where's the talk directed? It's directed at the task and the thinking about the task and the problem solving around the task in pairs. And then the pair has to flip to English to explain their thinking, why they chose a certain math strategy, why they think they've got the answer right. So the explaining part then is articulation in English. So they can flip between home language and English in a very managed way, depending on the teacher's skills and the techniques that we use. The second part of the methodology is text-based. And now we are talking about resources and good ones, and this country has to get real about the kind of text resources that we really need for modern education. And there are two parts to that, really. That at its most simple, we're just talking about how we can get learners to engage so much more efficiently and effectively with English text by being able to use their own bilingual learner talk in conjunction with the engagement with text. The second part is how they can use parallel language text, which is very powerful for learning in this kind of situation. And I'd be happy to show you examples of how we teach reading, with each learner having the reader in 2 languages. How we teach maths, which with each learner having the text in English and their own language. They read the problem in their own language. They've got to read it in English after that. So look, even in grade 12, we're still trying to teach learners that you never read the question once. You always read and you check read. Well, here we do the read and the check read, and we've got 2 different languages at work.
How important is it for pupils to be taught in their mother tongue language in the foundation phase of schooling? What effect could this have on their future learning?
Shannon, generally speaking, we feel that mother tongue only is as weak as English only. Neither is appropriate in a multilingual country. Our current policy, or current practice of 3 years of foundation phase, in some situations, many of our situations, it's straight to English in grade 1. But the current practice is normally supposed to be 3 years in foundation phase, and then the learner gets dropped into English in grade 4. And it does not work. And we've known for 30 years now that it does not work. We have every evidence that it does not work, and yet we still persist. In order for mother tongue medium to work, it needs to continue for 6 to 7 years in a well-resourced situation, with English being taught excellently as a language, as a language, as a subject. All right. But that might be appropriate in some rural areas. It cannot be appropriate in a multilingual community like those we have in Gauteng, unless we're going to go back to apartheid style separation of learners into ethnic language schools, which is surely what we do not want. In fact, it's one of the hangovers from apartheid that still, I believe, prevents spatial development along non-racial, non-ethnic lines in our big cities. We're beginning to get daylight on the teaching assistant issue. A lot of work has been done here in the Western Cape, and we, in our small way, have done a lot of experiments with volunteers and found them very successful. It's a whole area of opportunity, in fact, but that's only in the beginning. By grade 2, the buddy system, the same language pair system, in the hands of a skilled teacher, works superbly well to give those learners the lift into using English. But they need the strength of being able to use their own language alongside English. That is the key.
The Department of Basic Education has introduced a draft policy for the incremental introduction of African languages in South African schools. This is an important step forward in addressing current language issues. What are your thoughts on this draft policy?
It's also a complex one. It is an important step in regard to languages as subjects. It's particularly important in regard to English and Afrikaans learners. It is ludicrous at this stage for us to be sitting in the old mold of Afrikaans being the only language offered as a second language for English, for English learners. So yes, that is important. The second important part of that step forward is the insistence that the African language speakers should be learning their own languages seriously. That's important. Thirdly, what's important is that government have said that they will be supporting this policy with resources. The biggest criticism of the policy is that it actually puts the cart before the horse. It ignores the key question, the primary issue, which is the issue of medium, language as medium. And this makes no sense. The issues are linked, but to ignore that big issue is really to put the political goal ahead of the educational goal. Not just ahead, it's left out the educational goal, which is to address the disadvantage faced by the majority of South African learners with this obstacle to their progress in education. That is ignored. The whole thing is directed at the political goal of social cohesion, which is an important goal. But here was the opportunity to address both, and in the process to explain to people how they are interlinked.
Why is it important that learners are able to use their home language proficiently?
Because it gives them a framework for developing other languages, like English and any other language. If you have a foundation of your own language, if you can use your own language and understand how your own language works, that gives you the foundation to learn many languages and to learn them well. And going back to our original maintenance objectives, we found this terribly important. For learners to understand that the last thing you want to do if you want to develop good English is to forget about your own language and not relate English to your own language. You need that foundation. The stronger the foundation, and if you can keep developing that foundation, the stronger your framework for developing a language well. But then the second thing, of course, is that because then it gives you the other branch of your strong bilingualism. You can apply your language for thinking alongside English. And this does not just mitigate the disadvantage that we've been on and on about, but it, in many cases, gives you an advantage. Without a doubt, we have solid research now to show that bilingualism gives you an advantage for learning. That's why you need your language. You need it to be strong, and you need it to develop alongside with English year by year through your grades. And there's another amazing advantage that's coming out strongly from neuroscience now, and that is that bilingual thinking gives you an advantage in complex technical thinking, which is wonderful for our learners who want to do well in maths, science and technology. I can refer you to Jared Diamond's latest book. It's got a wonderful section on language, if the public is interested in seeing language from a world thinker's point of view. And he makes a big thing of this advantage for these strange kinds of complex thinking, where a bilingual can knock them and a monolingual can't. And we've got wonderful research that's come out recently from Australia and Asia as well, showing how your top math students are your bilingual students. And on probing, it's been found that in dealing with any complex issues, they think through them first in their home language, and then they flip to English. So there's lovely research going on at last.
Thank you. That was Margie Owen-Smith, manager of the Home Language Project, speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about the importance of home language in schools.